Hey guys, so today we are going to go over the excerpt that you read last night for homework, as well as the next chapter of The Giver, and we are going to be making some comparisons between the two texts. So the first thing I need you guys to do is to open your notebook to the next clean page, and go ahead and put the date in the top right-hand corner like usual. Then go ahead and write down our objectives for today. Our objectives for today are that we will provide an objective summary of the excerpt from Harrison Bergeron from last night, and we are going to compare the dystopian settings of that text with that of The Giver. So the first thing that we're going to do today is read Chapter 2, and then we will work on our guided practice at creating the comparison between the two texts. So we know from the ending of Chapter 1 that Jonas is very apprehensive or nervous about the upcoming ceremony for the 12s, but we aren't sure why that is yet. So we're going to go ahead and read the text to try to figure out what is going on. Remember that an objective summary provides the main ideas but without providing an opinion. So go ahead and write that down in your notebook and keep that in mind as we go through the text today. As usual, you can pause this video if you need to, but I'm going to move on. So, let's go ahead and look at page 11 of your text, and we are going to start reading. Jonas watched as his father poured a fresh cup of coffee. He waited. "You know," his father finally said, "every December was exciting to me when I was young, and it has been for you and Lily too, I'm sure. Each December brings such changes." Jonas nodded. He could remember the Decembers back to when he had become, well, probably a 4. The earlier ones were lost to him, but he observed them each year, and he remembered Lily's earliest Decembers. He remembered when his family received Lily, the day she was named, and the day she had become a 1. So now we know that in December of each year, there's a ceremony at each age level. So take 15 seconds to write that down in your notebook, and you can copy what's on your screen. Let's keep reading. The ceremony for the 1s was always noisy and fun. Each December, all the new children born in the previous year turned 1. One at a time, there were always 50 in each year's group, if none had been released. They had been brought to this stage by the nurturers who had cared for them since birth. Some were already walking, wobbly on their unsteady legs. Others were no more than a few days old, wrapped in blankets, and held by the nurturers. "I enjoy the naming," Jonas said. His mother agreed, smiling. "The year we got Lily, we knew, of course, that we'd receive our female, because we'd made our application and been approved. But I'd been wondering what her name would be." "I could have sneaked a look at the list prior to the ceremony," Father confided. "The committee always makes the list in advance, and it's right there in the office at the Nurturing Center. As a matter of fact," he went on, "I feel a little guilty about this, but I did go in this afternoon and look to see if this year's naming list had been made yet. It was right there in the office, and I looked up number 36. That's the little guy I've been concerned about, because it occurred to me that it might enhance his nurturing if I would call him by his name. Just privately, of course, when no one else is around. So, we know that during the year 1 ceremony, babies are placed with their families and given a name. And we know that this is different from our society because the new mothers don't actually give birth or raise the child that first year, and the name is assigned to the child instead of picked by the parents. So let's go ahead and write an essential idea for that. We're going to say that during the year 1 ceremony, babies are placed with their families and given a name. In paragraph 12, we also heard mention of the new child Gabriel again. And we see that the father secretly broke the rules to find out the child's name in order to help him. So what we're going to write is right here. Jonas's father secretly broke the rules to help nurture him. So go ahead and copy that down. Let's continue. "Did you find it?" Jonas asked. He was fascinated. It didn't seem a terribly important rule, but the fact that his father had broken a rule at all awed him. He glanced at his mother, the one responsible for adherence to the rules, and was relieved that she was smiling. His father nodded. His name, if he makes it to the naming ceremony without being released, of course, is to be Gabriel. So I whisper that to him when I feed him every 4 hours, and during exercise and playtime, if no one can hear me. I call him Gabe, actually, he said, and grinned. Gabe. Jonas tried it out. A good name, he decided. Though Jonas had only become a 5 the year they had acquired Lily and learned her name, he remembered the excitement, the conversations at home, wondering about her, how she would look, who she would be, how she would fit into their established family unit. He remembered climbing the steps to the stage with his parents, his father by his side that year instead of with the other nurturers, since it was the year that he would be given a new child of his own. He remembered his mother taking the new child, his sister, into her arms while the document was read to the assembled family units. New child 23, the namer had read, Lily. He remembered his father's look of delight and that his father had whispered, She's one of my favorites. I was hoping for her to be the one. The crowd had clapped and Jonas had grinned. He liked his sister's name. Lily, barely awake, had waved her small fist. Then they had stepped down to make room for the next family unit. So, after reading this paragraph, we know that the ceremony for the ones is very exciting and happy. It doesn't make Jonas nervous like the upcoming ceremony of 12 does. So our essential idea here is going to be that the ceremony for ones is very exciting and happy. And after reading the last 2 pages, I'm going to say that the essential idea is that the ceremonies at the end of each year of a child's life can be exciting, but are still controlled by a lot of rules. So let's take some time to write that down. I know this because it is talking about the year 1 ceremony, and Jonas and his parents were very excited to meet the new baby. Also, people are not allowed to know what baby they are getting or the name until the government tells them. So we know they're still very strict about rules, even with a happy celebration. Let's go ahead and keep reading. We're in the middle of page 13. When I was in 11, his father said now, as you are, Jonas, I was very impatient waiting for the ceremony of 12. It's a long 2 days. But, I remember that I enjoyed the ones, as I always do, but that I didn't pay much attention to the other ceremonies, except for my sister's. She became a 9 that year and got her bicycle. I'd been teaching her to ride mine, even though technically I wasn't supposed to. Jonas laughed. It was one of the few rules that was not taken very seriously and was almost always broken. The children all received their bicycles at 9. They were not allowed to ride bicycles before then. But almost always the older brothers and sisters had secretly taught the younger ones. Jonas had been thinking already about teaching Lily. So here we see that we have some more information about the rules. Even small things like how old you need to be to ride a bicycle are controlled by the society and by the government. So let's write that down. And let's keep reading. There was talk about changing the rule and giving the bicycles at an earlier age. A committee was studying the idea. When something went to a committee for study, the people always joked about it. They said that the committee members would become elders by the time the rule change was made. Rule changes were very hard. Sometimes, if it was a very important rule, unlike the one governing the age for bicycles, it would have to go eventually to the receiver for a decision. The receiver was the most important elder. Jonas had never even seen him that he knew of. Someone in a position of such importance lived and worked alone. But the committee would never bother the receiver with a question about bicycles. They would simply fret and argue about it themselves for years, until the citizens forgot that it had ever gone to them for study. So let's think about this. He says that they make jokes about the committee that makes the rules because they take so long to ever come to a decision. Let's keep going. His father continued. So I watched and cheered when my sister Katya became a 9 and removed her hair ribbon and got her bicycle, Father went on. Then I didn't pay much attention to the 10s and 11s, and finally, at the end of the second day, which seemed to go on forever, it was my turn. It was the ceremony of 12. Jonas shivered. He pictured his father, who must have been a shy and quiet boy, for he was a shy and quiet man, seated with his group, waiting to be called on to the stage. The ceremony of 12 was the last of the ceremonies. It was the most important. I remember how proud my parents looked, and my sister too, even though she wanted to be out riding the bicycle publicly. She stopped fidgeting and was very still and attentive when my turn came. But to be honest, Jonas, his father said, for me there was not the element of suspense that there is for your ceremony, because I was always fairly certain of what my assignment was to me. So let's stop there. We still don't know exactly what the ceremony of 12 is, but we do know you get an assignment. What could this mean? Let's think. If you get a homework assignment in school, it's the work that you need to get done at home. So I'm going to think that the ceremony of 12 will be when you find out what job you get for your future. 12 years old seems pretty young to find out what job you will have for the rest of your life. I'm sure most of you don't know exactly what you want to be when you grow up yet. So it would make sense that Jonas is apprehensive about this ceremony. We also know that of all the ceremonies, year 12 is the most important. So, the reason Jonas and his parents are having this conversation is because he is nervous about it. I'm going to say that the central idea, is that Jonas is nervous about receiving his job at the ceremony of 12. And I'm also going to predict that the rest of the chapter is going to be about Jonas's apprehension. So the central idea, like we said, is that everyone gets nervous at the ceremony of 12 because it's very important. Let's quickly finish up. Jonas was surprised. There was no way really to know in advance. It was a secret selection made by the leaders of the community, committee of elders, who took the responsibility so seriously that there were never any jokes made about assignments. His mother seemed surprised too. How could you have known? She asked. His father smiled his gentle smile. Well, it was clear to me, and my parents later confessed that it had been obvious to them too, what my aptitude was. I had always loved the new children more than anything. When my friends in my age group were holding bicycle races or building toy vehicles or bridges with their construction sets or all the things I do with my friends, Jonas pointed out, and his mother nodded in agreement. I always participated, of course, because as children we must experience all of those things. And I studied hard in school, as you do, Jonas. But again and again, during free time, I found myself drawn to the new children. I spent almost all of my volunteer hours helping in the nurturing center. Of course, the elders knew that from their observation. So this is interesting. Here we find out that the 12s are not just placed into their jobs. They don't get to choose what they become, but the government observes them and picks something that they think they'll be good at. So the government, who chooses the job that people receive, pick them based on the individual's strengths. So, we're going to say that 12s don't pick their job, but the government does match their skills. And let's keep reading. Jonas nodded. During the past year, he had been aware of the increasing level of observation. In school, at recreation time, and during volunteer hours, he had noticed the elders watching him and the other 11s. He had seen them taking notes. He knew, too, that the elders were meeting for long hours with all of the instructors that he and the other 11s had had during their years of school. So I expected it, and I was pleased, but not at all surprised when my assignment was announced as nurturer, Father explained. Did everyone applaud, even though they weren't surprised? Jonas asked. Oh, of course. They were happy for me that my assignment was what I wanted most. I felt very fortunate. His father smiled. Were any of the 11s disappointed your year? Jonas asked. Unlike his father, he had no idea what his assignment would be, but he knew that some would disappoint him. Though he respected his father's work, nurture would not be his wish, and he didn't envy laborers at all. His father thought, No, I don't think so. Of course the elders are so careful in their observations and selections. I think it's probably the most important job in our community, his mother commented. My friend Yoshiko was surprised by her selection as doctor, Father said, but she was thrilled. And let's see, there was Andre. I remember that when we were boys he never wanted to do physical things. He spent all the recreation time he could with his construction set, and his volunteer hours were always on building sites. The elders knew that, of course. Andre was given the assignment of engineer, and he was delighted. Andre later designed the bridge that crosses the river to the west of town, Jonas's mother said. It wasn't there when we were children. There are rarely disappointments, Jonas. I don't think you need to worry about that, his father reassured him. And if there are, you know there's an appeal process. But they all laughed at that. An appeal went to a committee for study. So let's remind me one more time. Why is everyone laughing when they say that it went to the committee for study? They're laughing because they know that the committee takes way too long to answer any questions. So Jonas will probably be an old man before his appeal goes through. So, based on that reading, we're going to stop there. You're going to continue finishing up the chapter. It's about a page and a half with your shoulder partner. And then you're going to go ahead and do some comparing and contrasting with the Harrison Bergeron article that you read last night for homework.